Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Bacharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Askatyade. So today we're going to read from Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 2. Contents of the Gita summarized. Text number 56. Sukeshu Vamanagmanak Sukeshu Vigatas Priha Vita Raga Bayakroda Stitidir Muni Uchite. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. If everyone can turn on their video, if that's possible, that would be best. One who's not disturbed in mind, even amidst the threefold miseries, related when there is happiness, who is freed from attachment, fear, and anger, is called a sage of steady mind. Srila Prabhupada's purport. The word muni means one who can agitate his mind in various ways for mental speculation without coming to a factual conclusion. It is said that every muni has a different angle of vision, and unless a muni differs from other munis, he cannot be called a muni in the strict sense of the term. Asa varishir yasya matam nabinam. Mahabharata Vana Parva 313 to 117. But a Stiti Muni, as mentioned herein by the Lord, is different from an ordinary Muni. The Stiti Muni is always in Krishna consciousness, for he has exhausted all his business of creative speculation. He is called Prasanta Nishesha Mano Ratantara, Strotra Ratna 43. Or one who surpassed the stage of mental speculations and has come to the conclusion that Lord Shri Krishna or Vasudeva is everything. Vasudeva Sarvam Iti Saramahatma Sudurlava. He is called a Muni fixed in mind. Such a fully Krishna conscious person is not at all disturbed by the onslaughts of the threefold miseries. For he accepts all the miseries as the mercy of the Lord, thinking himself only worthy of more trouble due to his past misdeeds. And he sees that his miseries, by the grace of the Lord, are minimized to the lowest. Similarly, when he is happy, he gives credit to the Lord, thinking himself unworthy of the happiness. He realizes that it is due only to the Lord's grace that he is in such a comfortable condition and able to render better service to the Lord. And for the service of the Lord, he is always daring and active, and is not influenced by attachment or aversion. Attachment means accepting things for one's own sense gratification, and detachment is the absence of such sensual attachment. One fixed in Krishna consciousness has neither attachment nor detachment, because his life is dedicated in the service of the Lord. Consequently, he is not at all angry even when his attempts are unsuccessful. Success or no success, Krishna conscious person is always steady in his determination. So the verse again, Dukeshu Vamanagmanak Sukeshu Vigatas Priha Vita Raga Baya Kroda Stiti Muni Uchate. One who is not disturbed in spite of the threefold miseries, one who is not disturbed in mind, even amidst the threefold miseries, related when there is happiness, and who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, it's called the sage of steady mind. Om Agyana Tamanandasya Gananjana Sulakaya Chaksur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha. This is the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which is a summary of what was to come, a brief outline. And we're coming to the end of the second chapter. Krishna has already explained that we're eternal souls and that we should do our duty. He's telling Arjuna he should do his duty as a Kshatriya. He also explains Sankhya Yoga to Arjuna, qualities of the soul. Then he starts explaining about how Yavanartha Napade Tavasa Samplutodake Tarvan Sarveshu Vedeshu Ramanasya Vijanita. That all the small ponds or reservoirs of water can at once be fulfilled the needs of the water by a great reservoir. So similarly, all the purpose of the Vedas can be fulfilled by one who knows the sign or the object behind them. In other words, Krishna is trying to bring us to the platform of detachment by the process of, first of all, dutiful behavior. Now Arjuna is a little curious about, Krishna has described a person who's not involved within the Vedas, who's transcendental to them, who does his activities dutifully, at least as an example. So Arjuna wants to know how we can recognize such personalities. So we ask something very difficult to understand. In other words, Arjuna says, Stita pragyasya ka brasha samadhi stasya keshava stita der yak vrajeta kim asita vrajeta kim. Arjuna avacha, how do you tell a self-realized person, one who's a dhira? How does he sit? How does he walk? What is his language? Arjuna vacha stiti der muni uchate. How does he speak? What is his language? And how does he sit? And how does he walk? Stita pragyasya ka bhasha. This is our aim, to become fixed in Krishna consciousness. This is better known as nishta, or liberation, or material concept of life. Arjuna is not asking about someone who's situated in prema bhakti. He's simply asking about someone who's not, his consciousness has become part of the spiritual world rather than merging it into the material world. Generally, we merge our consciousness into the material world by being conscious of our gross material body, and also even more absorbing than our gross material body is our minds. Even if we have a toothache, we generally don't, if we're watching a sport such as soccer, then we forget about our toothache until, if we win, then if our team wins, then we may completely forget about our toothache. And if our team loses, then the toothache is hundreds of times worse. So we can see that it's not simply the state of our mind or the state of our body, it's the state of our consciousness that determines how we're experiencing either the material world or the spiritual world. So what Arjuna wants to know, since Krishna has just spent 50-something verses explaining about the process of self-realization, namely to focus away from the material world, our gross bodies, what's going on in the material world, because we can become disturbed not only by our gross bodies, but also our ideas, what's going on outside of our bodies, as well as our minds. Sometimes the same thing will make us happy, and the next moment it may give us distress. Everything depends upon how we perceive things. Just like if a beautiful woman is walking down the street, then a dog with his consciousness will see the woman as a potential meal. If a lusty man sees the woman, he may think this is an object of enjoyment. And if a brahmachari or a renunciate sees, or a brahmachari specifically, sees a woman, he may think that she may be a source of problems for him. So the same woman is seen in different visions by different persons or living entities. But actually there's an objective person called a woman, and inside that woman, as inside all living entities, is a soul. So there's an objective way of seeing it, which we'll find in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna will constantly refer to. Vidya Vinaya Sampane, Brahmani Gavi Hastani, Shuni Chaiva Swapake Cha, Pandita Samadarshana. By the process of devotional service, by the process of becoming conscious of Krishna, one will be able to see all living entities on the same level as bodies, of different varieties of bodies, but within every body there is a spiritual being. And every spiritual being has the same objective, namely to please Krishna. That when Krishna is pleased, then it is like water in the root of a tree, and the water goes to all the leaves and branches. But now, because we're connected with the outside world, our consciousness, therefore, instead of trying to please Krishna, we're trying to please our gross senses and our subtle mind. But these are also manifestations of Krishna's energy. It is not that we can independently satisfy ourselves because we're very tiny. We have to serve something. So those in the material consciousness, they're taking direction in service from the gross senses and the subtle mind, being driven by one's intellect. The dog has an intellect. He sees the woman as a meal. The lusty man has an intellect. He sees the woman as a potential object of enjoyment. And the brahmachari may see the woman as a possible danger. So the intellect tells them how to steer their senses in different directions and their minds. But this has nothing to do with their actual identity as a soul. It's simply outwardly driven by the gross senses and the subtle mind and the intellect, according to the intellect, the intelligence one has, or the vision. So Arjuna wants a vision so he can see who is the self-realized person. After all, he himself is supposed to become self-realized. So if he doesn't know what a self-realized person is, specifically Arjuna asks, how does he sit? How does he walk? How does he talk? What's his language? Now, this is a little cryptic, but the acharyas tell us that Krishna's answers, apparently, although not concerned with how a self-realized person sits, Otherwise, I know one time there was Tamal Krishna Maharaj was giving a class, and one boy walked in, and in the back, he said, "You told me that this person is a self-realized person, but I can see he has glasses on. So how could he be perfect?" And so the boy left, thinking this person couldn't possibly be perfect because his senses are imperfect. He has glasses on. What is a self-realized person? As Krishna says in the purport of verse number 54, cannot be understood solely externally. Although Prabhupada mentions that the most important quality of a self-realized person is how does he talk? Namely, he talks about Krishna, or he only talks about Krishna. So Arjuna asks these questions and Krishna answers them, beginning with verse number 55. Prajahati yada kaman sarvan parthamanogatam anmani vatmanatushta stita pragyas patochate. One is not to when when a person gives up all right his desire for sense gratification, which arise from mental concoction, when his mind thus purified, finds satisfaction of the self alone, then he's said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. So this is the first step. In other words, if we can't tell what's the difference between our minds, what our minds are demanding, and what Krishna is asking us, then it's impossible to make any progress. As one devotee said, I had a dream last night, and Krishna asked me to become the Acharya. And another devotee said, well, I also had a dream last night. And Krishna came to me and told me that you would have such a dream, and I should tell you that it wasn't Krishna who came in your dream. It was the illusory energy. In other words, on the mental platform, one will not be able to see clearly what is the difference between our mental concoctions and reality. We may be able to experience the difference between the results of acting on the mental platform and the results of acting in Krishna consciousness. Therefore, Krishna starts with the idea that everything here belongs to Krishna. This he'll explain throughout the Bhagavad Gita, that he's the proprietor. Now, when we forget that he's the proprietor, then automatically we'll assume that someone else is the proprietor. Or at least we'll think everything here has no proprietor, and therefore potentially I can become the proprietor. Just like the astronomers, they look into a telescope and they see something they call a planet. And they now claim it's theirs because they looked at it. As a matter of fact, they give the planet their name. As if now, because they saw the planet, it's theirs. Similarly, in every language, we designate according to our language everything we see, and we claim that somehow or another there is no proprietor. It just came about by accident, and that if somehow or another we can go to the moon and put our flag there, then it now becomes ours. we're like on the level of a little baby. If you're a little baby, you put if you put your finger in a little baby's hand, it'll close on your finger. And now it believes it belongs to the baby, although you might not agree. And if you try to take your hand your finger out of the hand, the baby will try and hold on to it because it believes it now belongs to it. Of course, when we get older, we're supposed to mature. But sometimes people don't go beyond that level. Anything that they put into their hand now becomes theirs. That's why it's a good technique on book distribution to put the book in people's hands. Because the hands close on the book, and now they start becoming possessive immediately, that this is mine. And if you show them something of interest, then they become really enthusiastic. Wow, they gave it to me. And this is actually nice. I can show my friends these pictures. And then if you ask for a donation, and if you ask in the right way, in the right mood, they have to tear themselves either by giving the book back, which they may become attached to, and they don't want to let go, or letting go of a little piece of paper. So if they have enough pieces of paper, they think, well, this book has more papers than this little piece of paper. So I'll give them the little piece of paper in exchange for the big book with a lot of paper. Then they may purchase the book or give a donation. So this tendency to be possessive is a product of the mode of ignorance, which we're all naturally born with, or born under. And therefore, it's a little difficult when ideas come into our minds about things concerning I and mine, because of our attachment to what we think is ours. And therefore, generally, people act as a reaction to what they think is theirs, or who they think they are. Identity, our false ego, is also an attachment. It's the most fundamental attachment, that I am this body, and therefore, if someone gives me something that I like, then they're my friend. And if someone takes something away, or potentially is going to take something away that I want, they're my enemy. So life in the material world is actually quite simple. If I become attached to something and someone wants to take it away from me, then they're my enemy. And if I want to get something and there's obstacles to getting it, they're also my enemy. Now, if someone takes away an obstacle for me or gives me something I want, they're my friends. So generally, in any dealings we have here in the material world, there's always friends and enemies. Of course, Krishna also says that there are neutral people who we usually neglect because to us, they don't have much use. There's also people who try to mediate, etc., etc. There's varieties, but generally the closer we become to someone, the more the possibility is to either become attached to them or reverse. As a matter of fact, if we're extremely attached to someone and they don't fulfill our desires or they impede our desires, then they become even more of an enemy to us than just a normal person. So this is all called mental concoction. Mental concoction because even if someone gratifies or satisfies our desires, we won't be satisfied. And if someone takes something away from us, although we may temporarily lament, but actually we'll forget about it after some time. Just like we had so many baby teeth, and now we don't have them anymore. But no one wakes up in the morning lamenting, what happened to my baby teeth? Someone took them from me. Because when we're babies and we see our tooth, we may become a little disturbed. I lost a tooth. And therefore, at least in the West, you put the tooth underneath the pillow, and then your parents give you a donation for it in return for your tooth that you lost. So this is material existence. Trying to figure out if someone is my friend or my enemy based on whether they're gratifying my desires or they're not. Therefore, obviously, our relationships are not as sweet as they could be, nor is our consciousness as sweet as it could be, because we're constantly getting mixed up between friends and enemies, between things we're attached to and things we're averse to. Therefore, Krishna starts out with that when one understands that in the material world, we're faced with innumerable opportunities, either for attachment or for aversion. As a matter of fact, everyone, and everything we look at immediately reminds us of many, many lifetimes of attachment or aversion. That's why we can see it's so strange in modern society. Because attachment and aversion are natural. We expect that. But now people are attached and averse to all kinds of things that would be considered to be undesirable in the past or abnormal. Now they're trying to claim that there are no two sexes, for instance. There's not male and female. There's an endless variety of possibilities. And at any moment, if you feel yourself to be a male, even if you're a woman, then you become a male. And if you're a female, or if you're a male, and you at any moment think you're a woman, then suddenly you become a woman. And there may be other ones that I don't know. I don't know all the possibilities, but I think they have, the last time I saw it, which was like a year ago, it has 27 different designations you could have. Not male, female, but alternating male and female, going to which side of the bed you wake up on, etc. Attraction to animals, attraction to dead bodies, and everything goes. So as one sinks deeper into the mode of ignorance, then attachments and aversions become even more increasingly into the mode of ignorance. Now here Krishna is saying that we can expect in the material world different varieties of experiences. To think that everything is going to be, or as they say in English, peaches and cream, but I don't know if that expression is in any other language, which means that everything is going to be so pleasant all the time for us. After all, we become devotees. We're trying to chant Hare Krishna. We've been following the regular principles, eating prasadam, doing service. So why should life be disturbing for us? But actually, Krishna did not make the material world for our comfort. And even Lord Brahma, who had to spend 100 lifetimes perfectly executing Varnashram Dharma, which is not very simple. We don't even know what our duty is, what to speak of having to spend 100 lifetimes executing some duty. In order to become Brahma, even he, at the beginning of his existence, was sitting on the lotus flower, and a hurricane came and practically knocked him off the lotus flower. Now, if a hurricane comes to Florida, there may be a little bit of a problem. But if you get knocked off a lotus flower, which is thousands of miles or kilometers, and you fall into the Garbhodak Ocean, and it's total darkness, there's not even a candle you can light, you're in problems. So Brahma, the most pious living entity in the universe, practically was going to drown in the Garbhodak Ocean after he woke up to the reality of his existence. And then after creating the first living entities, they turned on him and tried to abuse him. I mean, we may have some problems with our children, but not like Brahma's first problems with his children. So that's the most pious living entity. And how does that compare with us? Probably he's more pious than we are. So if there are problems, tatenu kampam susamikshmano unjana evatmakritam vipakam vidvag babubira vidadan namaste jiveta sanmukti sadayabha. Now, how Krishna is explaining here how we should see problems and how we should see comfortable situations also, which is more or less the absence of problems. Now, our ability to see things correctly will depend upon the purity of our heart. The more our heart is covered, the more difficult it is to see things properly. If our heart is in the mode of ignorance, we'll become more or less more likely to get disturbed. Or even if our mind is disturbed, we'll be more likely to not understand things in the proper perspective so we can react properly. If we're in the mode of passion, then we may become depressed and difficulty and too much elated when we get what we want. The typical example in ignorance and passion, as I mentioned before, is a soccer game. If our team wins, we're elated. We're practically, people are screaming, they're hugging each other. Nothing really happened of any value to them. But on the mental platform, they become elated in the mode of passion. And if their team loses, then they're ready to commit suicide or destroy the opposite party. Indeed, in South America and Central America, one year, one team lost a football match, a soccer match, and the other team started a war. The other country started a war on that basis. That's called intense attachment and aversion. Now, hopefully we're not so attached or averse, but according to the way we see things, that will determine what our reaction is. So here Krishna is trying to give us a vision, whether we're in goodness or in passion or in ignorance, what is the proper standard to be? How to properly react to our circumstances. Now, in ignorance, our heart will tell us one thing to do, and we feel it. It's not just an intellectual, it's an experience, an intense experience, how to react. And our minds will give us all justification for what we think, all based upon being a victim or being unjustly treated or being justified in what we think. But Krishna says that if we somehow or another, we chant Hare Krishna and we try to see things in Krishna consciousness, then our hearts will become gradually, well, if Krishna is there, we might experience some ecstasy. And when the ecstasy comes, then whatever we thought was our justification goes away. And hopefully we start seeing things in Krishna consciousness. That even our worst enemy, whether we like it or not, is also eternal, just like we are. And our best friend, whatever they give us, actually doesn't belong to us. It was given to us by Krishna, and it was meant for his service. And if we utilize it properly, then we become benefited, and our friend becomes benefited. And if someone takes something away from us, then, depending on who took it away and why, but we haven't lost anything. You can't lose something that you never owned. And therefore, one is not disturbed, not so much because he's neutral, he understands that everything belongs to Krishna, and therefore no one can really give us anything or take anything away from us. But because he's thinking about Krishna, therefore, it doesn't really matter what's going on externally on one level, because one is not living in the material world, one is living in the spiritual world. Or at least one is living in Krishna consciousness and understands that if someone gives one something, it's Krishna giving it to one. And if someone takes something away, then Krishna has a reason for taking it away. Just like that story of the king I've told before and his minister. The minister was a very optimistic devotee, and he kept on saying that everything that Krishna does is good. In Spanish is todos que Krishna hace es bueno. But the king didn't like to hear that. So he became a little disturbed and said, why are you always telling us that whatever Krishna does is good? So the king told the minister, he said, well, if I put you in jail, would that be all right? Is that Krishna's mercy? So the minister said, yes, whatever Krishna does is good. So the king said, all right, told his assistants to put the minister in jail. But then the king heard that there were some thieves who were stealing his cows. So he took his army out to protect his cows. But on the way, he got lost. And so the thieves caught the king, and they were bringing him to be sacrificed to Durga, goddess Durga. Actually, I have to step back a little bit. So the minister was telling the king everything that Krishna does is good. So when they were hunting one time, the king took an arrow and the arrow slipped off his bow and cut his finger off. So the king asked the minister, is that good? Is this Krishna's mercy? So the minister said, yes, everything Krishna does is good. So then the king said, if I put you in jail, is that also Krishna's mercy? So the minister said, yes, of course, whatever Krishna does is good. So then when the king was out trying to capture the dacoits, so the thieves, he finally he was captured by the thieves themselves, and they were about to sacrifice him to Mother Durga. They bathed him They fed him very nice some nice food. And they took him before the goddess Durga, and they're going to cut off his head before the goddess and sacrifice him. But the priest looked at the king and saw that he only had on one hand 4 fingers, and said that this king, whoever he is, he only has 4 fingers on one hand. He's not worthy to be sacrificed to the goddess Durga. So the thieves told the king, sorry, you can't be sacrificed. I think we're going to have to throw you out of here. So they took the king and threw him out. He said, sorry, what to do? So the king made it back to his kingdom. And he immediately went to the minister and said, you're right. Everything that Krishna does is good. But I can't understand, why is it that I had you thrown into jail? What did Krishna serve by that? So the minister said, well, I have 5 fingers on both hands, and I'm always with you. So if I would have been traveling with you, searching for the thieves, they would have caught both of us. They would have seen that you only have 4 fingers on one hand, but I have 5 on both. So they would have sacrificed me. So actually, Krishna, having you throw me into jail was great mercy for me. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here to keep on telling you that everything Krishna does is good. So we should understand that we're being prepared to leave this body, either today or tomorrow. And therefore, adversity has to be there to train us how to become undisturbed at the time of leaving this body, how not to be attached to our conceptions and our possessions, how to be absorbed in Krishna consciousness, so that we actually have a chance to go back to the spiritual world or join with Krishna at the end of this body. If we don't get practice in our lifetime, being undisturbed and absorbed in Krishna consciousness in the midst of problems, then we won't be able to pass such a test at the time of leaving this body. Similarly, if comfort is there by Krishna's arrangement, or we're given opportunities to preach, then we should take it as an opportunity to fulfill Krishna's desire of spreading Krishna consciousness even more effectively. We're not simply looking for problems. We're looking for opportunities to become Krishna conscious. So sometimes there'll be problems, and sometimes there'll be less problems. When there's problems, we may take shelter of Krishna. Hopefully we do. And in the absence of problems, we tend to relax, become complacent. Just like I was studying Spanish, and there's something called Duolingo. They have stories. So people are on an elevator, and they're talking to each other, and the elevators start to fall. And they were becoming very disturbed. And one lady said, well, I'm too young to die. The other one said, well, I have so many things I want to do. I want to climb Mount Everest. And the other said, I want to learn how to fly a plane. I want to teach my cat how to drive a car. And the lady said, you want to teach a cat how to drive? And then the elevator stopped. Oh, it stopped. We're all right. And then it started to fall again. Oh no, it's falling again. I don't want to leave my body. I'm too, I have so many things I want to do. Yeah, and then suddenly the elevator stops and the door opens. And both of them will walk out. Oh, that was a close one. What are you going to do tonight? Oh, I think I'll just stay at home and watch television. Yeah, maybe I'll do that too. I was going to go out, watch a movie. So when things are all right, we tend to relax. Everything will be all right. It's just a temporary problem. But I'm going to be here practically forever, so no problem. Apparently, I almost left my body, but that was just, better forget about it and go on with my normal life in the material energy. Therefore, it's as much as a test to be in Krishna consciousness when things are difficult and our hearts are telling us that this is unfair or whatever else it's telling us, or we should react, in usually negative ways to our problems. It's difficult to fix the mind upon Krishna, see things in Krishna consciousness, remain undisturbed, and do what we understand that Krishna wants us to do in those circumstances. Think the way we think Krishna would, to think the way we think that Krishna would want us to think. To see things the way Krishna wants us to see things, as he explains in the Bhagavad Gita and other such scriptures. And when things are not apparently relatively difficult, not to relax, everything's all right, I'm okay, therefore the whole world is okay. To understand that we're not okay, the elevator is going to fall again, and eventually it'll crash. And at the same time, we're not the only ones in the elevator which is falling. There are all living entities in this material world. They're also falling. And some of them are falling into the darkest regions of existence. So to be complacent in this material world because we think that we're doing all right is actually an injustice. Because Krishna has given us this body, he's given us these opportunities so that we can assist him to help the other living entities understand that we're all in the same unfortunate situation, being in the material world. But we can become fortunate if we take shelter of the process of becoming Krishna conscious. Take it seriously, learn how to absorb our minds in Krishna, and therefore, whether we're in a happy position relatively or an unhappy position relatively, remain in the happiest position, namely maintaining our consciousness of Krishna. And at least we can continuously chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, in pleasure or in pain. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions? Comments? Something to remember the next time you get in an elevator. Okay, I have another engagement, so if there's no questions, we'll go to the other engagement. Okay, thank you all. Oh, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanande Haribol.
Hare Krishna.
Thanks so much, Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. Thank you
Hare
very
Krishna.
much.
Krishna Maharaj.
His Holiness Prahladananda Swami Maharaj ki
Jai.
jai.